Hello, hello. We are back for another episode of BlackLantic. Hillary Clinton. We're still in Halifax, but we finally left the library and we're in the beautiful Tribe Network with Alfred Burgesson.
Yo, yo,
So
yo, what's
excited
up, what's up?
to finally be speaking to this impeccable, amazing human being. Before we get into the conversation, I will throw to the intro.
BlackLantic Media acknowledges that it carries out its work on the traditional unceded territory of the Wolastoqey, Mi'kmaq, and Pescataway peoples.
I would also like to acknowledge that I am seated on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people.
And we are back from the intro. It's always the funniest, awkwardest thing to splice that in when we're in front of someone. But we're here. And we're finally a tribe.
Is this our first conversation via podcast, or have we had one before? Because I feel like this has been in the works for a long time.
That was the next thing I was about to say. Yeah, it's been a few years in the making. We've been trying to get you on the show, and for schedule conflicts and one thing or another, it hasn't happened. However, if it had have happened, it would have been virtual. So the fact that we are able to do this in person means that must have just been the way it was meant to be.
Yeah.
Welcome, that being said, to the show.
Thank you, guys.
How are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be on this podcast, honestly. I've been rooting from afar and love the work that you guys are doing, and I think it's incredibly important and it's unique. So I feel privileged to be able to join as a guest and to, sit down and chat with both of you.
Amazing.
We really appreciate you saying that, because something that we've been realizing into our third season is that we haven't taken the time to realize is that I guess we are doing something substantial and important, and that should exist out here in Atlantic Canada.
Yeah, it's that weird moment when you're like, we are doing good work. But it does also feel like such a full circle moment to have you on the show. I mean, yesterday and today we've been wearing Robert of Butchwo, who we interviewed, who Clinton got to mentor through Tribe. So we wouldn't have worn these designs to the Junos if it wasn't for your organization. I mean, we've spoken to so many people who've been affiliated with you. And like we said, I mean, it's just such a long time coming. And I mean, you've laid so much groundwork, I think, for things like us to even also be possible. It feels very much in parallel, but you have so much to be proud of. But I think we're gonna get into this. I will say, I'm gonna give the one disclaimer. I have one brain cell where I'm fighting for energy, and we have
mushroom coffee.
Mushroom coffee. And I'm gonna veer completely off script. I feel like I'm so impressed with your work, and I feel like we know so much about you that this is just going to be a good free flowing conversation. But I'd love to know more about everything about you before we get to the inception of Tribe. And you've done so many prolific things. You worked with so many amazing organizations and sit on so many boards. I'm so curious how you got here and got to this place.
Yeah, so originally from Ghana, born in Ghana, west coast of Africa. And my family moved to a very rural town in Nova Scotia when I was 6 years old. We moved to Port Hawkesbury in Cape Breton. I'm not sure if you know it, but it's a town of 3,000 people.
I'm wondering why I've heard of it. Yeah.
It's the drive. It's a town you drive through when you're on your way to Sydney. So it's right after the causeway. Once you cross the bridge in Cape Breton, it's a very small town. Yeah, so I immigrated there and grew up there, lived there for about 10 years before moving to Halifax. Being an immigrant is not an easy road. I think a lot of people look at immigrants as people who come in with a lot of privilege and, a lot of ambition and opportunities are given to them. And it's no. You weren't there when my, 5-person family lived in a 2-bedroom apartment, for 5 years, and parents were working multiple jobs and had to get re-educated because their credentials didn't matter. It was not an easy road at all. But I think, some of the things that have made me who I am today is just watching my parents grind and watching my parents just chase after their dreams, which was, to be the first in both of their families to leave Ghana and to come to North America. And I think it's just instilled a level of drive and motivation in me that, I probably wouldn't have if I would have grown up comfortably in Ghana, which those were the options. The options were to grow up super comfortably in Ghana, or, the decision my parents ended up making was uprooting us, moving us to Canada, starting from scratch and chasing a better quality of life.
No, you couldn't be more right with the issue of immigration and the fact that, especially with credentials not mattering and stuff like that, even in 2024, I'm still meeting immigrants on a daily basis who came here, but they were not informed their credentials didn't matter. And so they didn't even know they would have to be starting from scratch. And I still think that's a huge mark on the system. I wonder if there's an intentionality to it, because, usually when people immigrate, they're plucking the best and the brightest from the countries they come from, potentially hurting their economies in certain ways, coming over here and just not giving that opportunity. So people tend to think that immigrants are just showered with free money from the government and the like, and it couldn't be further from the truth.
Oh, exactly.
Why Port Hawkesbury? And what was school like for you? What have your experiences been in Atlantic before leading up to Tribe, which we'll talk about after?
Yeah. So didn't know what we were signing up for when we moved to here, to Nova Scotia. But my dad was an engineer. My dad worked as an engineer globally. He was in the Navy for a while in Ghana, and he's pretty good. So when they had the idea to immigrate to Canada, he wanted to continue his engineering path, and so in order to do that, he needed to recertify, go to NSCC, and the NSCC in Port Hawkesbury had the Nautical Institute. So everything to do with naval engineering, that was a place to go. And so that's why we went to Port Hawkesbury. And then we stayed for 10 years. We stayed for 10 years in Port Hawkesbury. And it was definitely a challenge. It was not easy. At that time, I think, Nova Scotia and this region, Atlantic Canada, is becoming more and more diverse. But back then, we were literally one of two Black families in this town, and so grew up feeling the minority for sure. Grew up feeling like we were being watched, rumors in town about this family and all that kind of stuff. But to be honest, I think I grew up in a household where my parents were very intentional about how they brought us up, and key messages, that they kind of reiterated to us growing up, that no matter what came our way, whether it was like racism that we all experienced. My sister was bullied many, throughout her schooling. It didn't really matter because we were so set on who we were and where we were going that it didn't get in the way of where we wanted to go.
Of course. So then did that experience change when you moved to Halifax? Did you find it different? Did any of that get any better? Because, growing up in New Brunswick, there's this very big perception that Nova Scotia has such a rich and diverse Black community, and almost like if you wanted to find that, you should be in Nova Scotia. And then, of course, doing this podcast, we've learned so much about the rich history of St. John and different areas in New Brunswick, and it turned out that I was just being misled. But I'm curious if that changed moving from that sort of more rural area into the place where we find ourselves sitting right now.
Yeah, it was interesting, growing up in Cape Breton and in Port Hawkesbury specifically, people looked at us as the Black family, and moving to Halifax is a whole lot more Black people here, and they're black in the sense that these are people who've been here for 400 years, and so I think I very quickly also learned that Blackness is verse in itself. You know what I mean? And I really, I think at the start, it was a bit intimidating to be around people who've been here for 400 years and to realize that, oh my God, we are different. You know what I mean? We may be people of African descent, but whatever has happened over the 400 years, we are different. And there's a lot of learning that has to be explored between Black immigrants and people who've been here. And so for a while, I think I was trying to figure that out. I just knew there was something there, but I didn't know what it was. It wasn't until later in my university years when I guess I really found my circle of people from the community that I got to spend time with, and got to learn more about the history and the culture of African Nova Scotians. But it's been a beautiful thing. It's been a beautiful thing, and I think it's something that we need to celebrate more.
Would you say you found your tribe?
100%. Yeah. Love the play on words. No, it's good. Definitely. And I think it's always been it's always been a part of my journey, honestly. It's just like looking for my people, especially coming from Port Hawkesbury. Like I was like, how do I fit in? You know what I mean? Do I try to fit in, or do I just go find my people? And so don't get me wrong, there were families and people and friends that I made there. Um, but I was certainly from a very young age kind of just on this journey of like, yeah, I want to build and find my own tribe and feel like I belong in a place. And that I think that's been an undertone for me since moving to Canada for sure.
Amazing.
Yeah, no, blackness is definitely an umbrella. It's a made-up word. It's that multiple people from all over the world come to North America and then they're black.
You know what? I just noticed you're wearing a Tribe Network.
Hey, I was waiting for you to say something.
We're branded.
I wear this all the time.
Love it. I love it.
I was trying to segue though. Speaking of Tribe, can you tell us the story behind the inspiration and inception of the Tribe Network, and what motivated you to focus on BIPOC entrepreneurship and innovation in Canada?
Can I ask a question
Yeah,
first too
of course.
before we get to Tribe? I'm just curious in terms of like when you were going through school, I'd love to know what your goal was or what you thought you saw yourself doing, and if you always saw yourself as like an entrepreneur and a founder of something that could be like this, or if I sort of know the story of what you experienced that led to this. So I'm wondering if that was a hard pivot and you saw yourself in a different path, and then get into
Great question. I saw myself as a basketball player growing up, right? And some of it came from what society told me I should be and what I should chase and what I'm capable of doing. So growing up, I was chasing basketball. My brother went to university and played basketball. I would also say that from a young age, like we loved sports, but my parents were always like, hey, like use the sport. Don't let the sport use you. You know what I mean? Like don't let it take you off track. Like be intentional about why you're playing the sport and how the sport's going to benefit your life. And so with all my three siblings, like we all use sport to get scholarships, for education. But yeah, I thought I was going to go to the NBA. That was my goal. That was my like dream when I was younger. I was ranked in Canada top 100 in my high school days. I played on the provincial team, and so it was my goal and my dream until I joined an after school program called Junior Achievement. And that's when I was like, oh my God, like there's another team sport that I love that is all about like ideas and creating and, identifying value. And so in grade 11, when I joined Junior Achievement, that's when it really opened up a whole nother like world for me, really. And I was like, holy, like, I think I want to explore this further. And I think there's something here. And I think it allowed me to also channel my energy in a different way that maybe I hadn't had a chance to previously to that.
So that could have been part of the spark of the...
Oh, 100%. Oh, 100%. Yeah, 100%. Like that experience in high school opened a world for me that I then like walked through and started to explore. And so much so that like in university, I quit basketball after my first year to start a business and to just go into that world full time, really. And so, back to the question of like, where did the inspiration of Tribe come from? Around that same time, when I quit basketball, started my first business, I walked into an innovation hub.
Can we know what the first business was?
Yeah, so I've had a few firsts. I would say so my first ever business, it wasn't a legit business, but it was a hustle, a side hustle. It was selling. So I went to a private school. Okay, basketball scholarship got me there, or academic scholarship got me there, and in this school, I was one of the only Black people in the school, and this in high school is around the time when I loved Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and I had the flat top. I had the flat top for a bit, and so I remember starting a t-shirt company called Bel-Air Apparel. And so that was my first ever, like, okay, I'm going to create this thing. I'm going to invest my own money and then I'm going to sell it to my peers. And they loved it. And that was like my first, I would say, experiment in starting something of my own. But yeah, Bel-Air Apparel was like that kind of high school hallway side hustle. My first real business, legitimate business, would have been a digital media company. So that was called Under the Bridge Digital Media. And I had a business partner, Jeremy McAvoy. We played basketball together at SMU. And essentially, I would walk around the city and I would go into different businesses who I realized didn't have a great social presence. And I would say, hey, like, here's like Instagram. Like, do you know you can put your product on here and you can find customers in like South America or like Africa or like, you know what I mean? The States. Like you can sell and market yourself, not just in the newspaper here. And so I would go in and like, convince people to adopt that. And then I had a team of creators like Jeremy, photographers, videographers, graphic designers, and we would all come together and just execute projects on behalf of local businesses and not-for-profits. Our first ever client was Courtside Sneakers. I don't know if you're familiar with Courtside, but they were based in PEI, and then they brought a store to Halifax back in 2016. And so that was my start. That was my start. And as I was saying, like I would say the idea for Tribe began in 2016 when I walked into an innovation hub and thought, oh, like this is a place that they're promoting as a business support center. You know what I mean? I can go in and get some help. And it was a bit of like this community kind of vibe to it is how it was positioned. And I remember being in that space and just feeling like, I don't belong here. You know what I mean? Like, I remember being like, imposter syndrome, but also like I don't feel supported here. You know what I mean? Like I don't feel supported. I don't feel like this is a place that was designed for me.
It wasn't for your
No,
community.
that's not imposter.
I didn't see myself in there. And so very quickly I was just like, something else needs to exist. I don't know what it is, but something else there's a gap. I knew there was a gap since like 2016. I went on to continue my business. And, I think we built a really incredible community back then for young creatives that were coming up, people who wanted to create but didn't have a ways to create and make money. I think at the time, Under the Bridge Digital Media found a way to do both of those things, give artists a chance to create and get paid for creating. And so ran that business for a couple of years and then went on to work with the Assembly of First Nations. And again, there I was like, holy, like, so you're telling me we have dozens of publicly funded innovation entrepreneurship hubs across the country, but none of them are targeting Black or Indigenous folks. You know what I mean? Like in that space too, I was like, how come we're not in these spaces? You know what I mean? Like people are generating tons of wealth. People are getting trained. People are getting mentorship. People are getting access to pitch competitions and are creating successful businesses. Why are we not included? You know what I mean? Like it's not like no one was making an intentional effort to include Black and Indigenous people in any of that. So again, like being a part of the Assembly of First Nations team, like I got to see more gaps in the ecosystem. And I think for a while, all that did was reinforce the idea of like, there's something missing. And so it wasn't until the pandemic that I was able to kind of have the time and the space to be like, okay, I think, what do I want to commit myself to over the next 10 years? Right. Before that, I was doing a bunch of projects and felt like side hustles. But the pandemic kind of gave me the opportunity to go a bit deeper and say, what do I want to commit myself to? And I think this thing that is a gap, I think this is a time to actually build it.
I have a question. I'm just curious of like the work with the assembly and the UN. Was it something that like you noticed on the side, this gap in this niche and the fact that there was like we weren't in those spaces and Black Indigenous people, or were you doing some work directly through them with entrepreneurship that made it so evident? I'm just curious how you sort of got that like light bulb moment of, oh, even here we're not in the space.
It was a combination of both in that, at a high level, the chiefs and, the ministers and so the relationship between the federal government and the assembly, I was in rooms where like, they're negotiating and talking things through and, you start to hear anecdotes of, well, that's not for us. You know what I mean? Like, we're not in those spaces, or like that was not built for us. And our people don't feel safe in there. They don't feel comfortable in there. It's not working for them. And so through there, got a lot of anecdotes at that high level. But the role was neat because it allowed both, being around those boardroom tables, but also then being in community and spending time with people on the ground and going to, sweat lodges and, being in feasts. And so it gave me the opportunity to both get that high level view, but then also to get to the ground and hear from entrepreneurs and people in community on the ground that, yeah, that's not for us,
Wow.
No, that's really interesting. I could really see the way that that seed was planted in your mind and the way that it grew and formed over the years to become Tribe.
100%. And I think that's the thing that people don't understand. Like, people look at me, I think sometimes, and say, oh my God, like it happened so fast, or like how did that happen overnight? It's like, dude, like this has been going on for years. Like, this seed was planted a long time ago, and I've been able to absorb context and information, and resources that have allowed me to actually make this thing like happen and work. Like, it didn't happen overnight. It took like 8 years. You know what I mean?
So what I was going to ask was, yeah, so tell the listeners who have never heard of Tribe what Tribe is, and I guess at the same time some of Tribe's highlights and specific achievements, or just anything.
Oh, man.
You want
I would be interested in hearing.
Where would you start?
I'd also be interested too in hearing like the challenges that have happened to lead to some of the achievements. Because I mean, like, I feel like we spend a lot of time, obviously, like giving you props, and like I feel like you get so many accolades and recognition. But I imagine that like it took the 8 years. You must have learned so much about getting to this place.
Yeah, it hasn't been easy. You know what I mean? Like, it's only been 4 years, 3 or 4 years since we launched. But it's gone by so quickly. And so Tribe we're positioned in the ecosystem as an entrepreneurship innovation hub for BIPOC folks. So we provide our members with access to workshops, coaches, mentors, and grant funding. We're funded by the federal government, so that helps in terms of giving us the capacity to do the work that we do. We now have a beautiful co-working space downtown Halifax that allows our members to access hot desks, a mailbox, technology, right? So we have technology that they can access and use. For us, I think it's also important that for new business owners, sometimes you're missing that legitimacy. You know what I mean? And so to have a space where you can host meetings or host roundtables with your potential customers or clients, I think gives them, allows maybe society or potential customers to look at them more seriously.
Or host podcasts.
Yeah.
Feels very legitimate being
It's an incredible space.
Yeah, it's stunning.
Incredible space.
Thank you. But yeah, we've been around for a few years now, and we provide those services to entrepreneurs. It's been incredible to we've grown a network over 1,000 people now. On our platform, we're kind of looking at heat maps and watching activity of where people are coming from. And while we are here in Halifax and focused in our work in Atlantic Canada, we're seeing a lot of activity in other regions of the country and also other countries. You know what I mean? And so it's a beautiful thing. And I always use a concept of like, start small, think big, right? We're starting here, starting in Halifax, Atlantic Canada, but ultimately we want to build a global network, right? We want to build a global network that allows our members to travel, that allows our members to connect with like-minded people across the world. So I think we're working up to that. I was actually thinking, and I was writing my notes yesterday, like, what are some lessons I've learned over the past few years? And I want to maybe what's that?
So how convenient. That's exactly what we wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
What are some key lessons? Because it's 3 years. So I registered Tribe in 2020, but it was only in 2021 that like I went public on it and like built a website and pushed the live button. And I literally remember, so it was March of 2021 when we went live. So it's been 3 years that we went live. And I remember waking up like shaking in bed before like going live, just because I was like, holy, like this is now going to be a part of my identity. You know what I mean? Like, I've been known as a basketball player, I've been known as an entrepreneur, and now I'm creating this hub for BIPOC folks, and like it's a responsibility, like there's accountability, like this is a part of who I am. And so it was a bit scary, I'm not gonna lie, going live on it. But I wanted to do it and I knew it needed to exist. But in thinking over the past week, like what are some lessons? I'm just going to share the 3 lessons, and then we can dive into conversation wherever you want to take it. But the 3 lessons I had was where you're not for everyone, trust your vision, and ask for help. Those are the 3 kind of main lessons that have come out from this journey so far. And all of those, there have been experiences that have informed these as kind of the main lessons that I've had over the past 3 years.
I have a question about the like global and like scaling, and then I want to come back to the lessons. But I was curious, and I think that I had obviously we had obviously heard about you because of how you've been impacting the East Coast, and I think that I hope that this sounds. I hope I delivered this in the right way, but I realized how big you were when people in Toronto were talking to me about you. And I was like, yeah, like I know Alfred. And I was like, wait, like holy shit, like they're doing such amazing, because like people are talking about you at Collision, at Elevate, and seeing you travel, and like having other people talk about how you're impacting without knowing that I knew you was huge. And so to tie that into my question, I'm just curious if, in terms of your mandate, are you mandated or beholden to any region, or are you telling me right now someone could be watching this in Senegal, where my ancestry is from, and get supports from you actively right now?
100%.
That's insane.
Yeah. Because I think the way we've positioned ourselves is, you don't have to be at the workshop to get the value. Being a part of the network is where the value comes from, because you're gonna learn and find out about people that you didn't know existed. You're gonna find potential partners that you can work with in the network. All the educational content and workshops that we deliver are online on our platform. So you can be in Senegal and log in on Tribe and access workshops that we're doing in Canada. You know what I mean? Like the potential for anyone to get value from this network like truly does exist. And I mean, we're always looking at ways to make it better and to improve. But that potential certainly does exist.
Amazing.
That's dope.
Yeah, that's so cool.
That's dope. Yeah, like when I first started getting into podcasting in 2020, early 2020, I had similar thoughts to what you've done, right? To building a hub, making the podcast more than just a podcast and making it a hub. But that exists now, so great.
Yeah.
Stress off my back. I'm going to pivot a little bit, if that's okay. Have you been back to Ghana since you were 6? You have, actually. And do you remember much about Ghana before you left? And tell us, I always want to hear about different African countries, and I don't know a lot about Ghana.
Yeah, so we moved in when I was 6 years old, and I didn't go back until I was about 21. So from 6 to 21, I was in Canada, and I went back when I was 21 for a visit. And in the past 3 years, I've been twice. So I'm trying to get back more often. I'm trying to like really get closer to my roots. And it's been beautiful, man. Like I get off the plane and like I almost start tearing up. Like the chills that I get of touching ground in the homeland. Oh, it's hard to describe the feeling. But it's incredible. And I know that Tribe will take me back home. You know what I mean? Like Tribe will take me back to Africa, and I hope that someday we have a chapter there. You know what I mean? Like I hope that we do. We can be intentional about cultivating a membership back home in Ghana and in other parts of Africa. I do think that's a part of the potential that we have.
Tell us just a tiny bit about like the sights, the sounds, the culture, the people.
So I mean, for anyone who doesn't know Africa or Ghana, Ghana was a place. It's a beautiful country, beautiful people. It played a pivotal part in the slave trade. Also, there are multiple slave castles in Ghana, and in kind of rediscovering my roots, I got to visit those, and Ghana, it was actually, there's a place in Ghana that is known as the Door of No Return, and that happened to be one of the gateway doors where slaves were taken from Africa to the Atlantic. And so, Africa and Ghana is such a beautiful place, and I think oftentimes we are told that story of slavery and we're positioned as these people who are poor. But what I've also really enjoyed is like looking at like kings and queens and like gold and the amount of wealth that is in Africa. And so that's been an interesting journey as well for me, is like learning about my family's ties to like royalty and what what I mean. Like it gives you a different sense of like who you are and your worth in the world when you know that you come from a lineage of like kings and queens. And I think like that's something that I hope that one day every Black person in North America who's born here gets the chance to experience Africa in that light, to 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 understand that yes, there was slavery and that our people were mistreated, but then to also realize that our people are incredibly powerful and beautiful. And so yeah, I think that's
No, that speaks to a lot because from a colonial perspective, like one of the strategies to break a culture and a population into submission is to remove them from their sense of ancestry, of history, to break their cultural roots, to erase their language, erase everything they know, which is what happened with indigenous populations and which was the goal with the West African slave trade. But the resiliencies, and so there is that difference. There's that 400 years of separation in which Black people formed completely a new culture, and has survived over here. But yeah, that's the difference, and we need to get back to that sense of ancestry, right? That sense of knowing that before being enslaved, Africa was a great nation, and well, Africa's diverse, but yeah, there were kings and queens, and we were the envy of certain other areas of the world. That's deep. That's deep. But yeah.
I want to steal a question from you because you've been asking a lot of our guests this weekend one very specific question.
I know what you're going to ask.
Yeah. How do you even phrase it? You're like, we know he has like a little spiel and he's like, we know the artist or the person who's connected to, for last few interviews it's been musicality, but we know like Alfred as a tribe, and you literally said that this is about to be part of your identity when you woke up that morning, and you are, I think, seen as the face of this, the founder of it. But who are you outside of this, outside of entrepreneurship? Like you've mentioned, like basketball and being conscious about what you put in your body because of this whole mushroom coffee situation. But yeah, what interests you and what keeps you going and motivated outside of tribe and keeping this beautiful building?
Because we are more than what we do.
100%. I love that you're highlighting that as part of the interview.
Again, I stole the question from him.
I love it. And sometimes it's a great reminder too, that we're not just what we do, or, we're not just our work. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's easy to get tied up. It's easy to get tied up in that. And I'm guilty of it sometimes, where I attach my identity too closely to tribe, such that when there's criticism or feedback, I'm like, oh my God, like, man, I'm horrible. You know what I mean? But it's like, no.
Me with the podcast, anytime we get a comment, I'm like, I was just trying to be a good interviewer. I don't know what you mean. And then I watch the clip back and I'm like, oh yeah, it was a bit rude. Anyway.
So I love the question. I think I'll be honest to say, like, it's been a struggle, and I haven't always been great at having space for my personal world and then doing justice to the work that I'm trying to. Yeah. There hasn't been much balance, honestly. Yeah. There hasn't been much work-life balance, to be completely honest. And I've been reflecting on this a little bit. And, I think the realization I'm coming to is that, like, if you want to do something great, if you are committed to something and you're bringing something to life that has not existed before, I'm not sure you can have balance in that pursuit. I'm not sure you should pursue balance in that pursuit if you're truly committed to making this thing happen within your lifetime. And so for me personally, I think what I'm realizing more and more is that, like, when I started this, I said I was going to commit minimum 10 years to this vision, to this mission. There's a responsibility that comes with that. You know what I mean? Like, and to some degree, it's okay to not have balance. You know what I mean? Like, I'm doing the thing that I said I was going to do.
Absolutely.
And so, and it's a period of time. I'm in a period of time where I'm required to commit to the thing that I'm building. I'm in a period of time where I'm required to, you know, influence other people, convince other people to be a part of this thing. And so it's not going to be like this forever. You know what I mean? But while I'm committed to this thing, I better be on it. You know what I mean? And so that's just maybe a preface to the answer I'm about to give. But it's definitely been a journey of like seeking balance, not seeking balance, kind of that weird tension.
I feel, I mean, I
No,
obviously still
yeah,
want
you're
to
still gonna,
hear
yeah.
the answer, but what I find curious is that, like, I've seen people, like, I'm very privileged to be able to know, like, legendary people like Julie Black, and who's in Toronto, and she speaks a lot about this idea that you almost have to amalgamate the things. It's like, can I listen to an audiobook about entrepreneurship while I'm on the Peloton? So I'm getting the workout and I'm doing the fitness stuff that's going to keep me going throughout the day. It's like, how do you layer the things that fill your cup and integrate so that you, if your work-life balance isn't 50-50, what is your 70-30 so that you're still able to show up and be the Alfred that tribe needs and fill your cup? Because I would say, from just being around you and seeing, you know, the advanced house pop-up that you had in the party and being around you, like, you're filling so many people's cups. And so yours, and I know you're going to give the answer, but I just wanted to interject and say, like, I'm so curious what fills yours even for that 30%, because if the balance isn't 50-50, you still have to be showing up for you. You're showing up for so many people through this organization. Anyway, so
No, it's good observation. I mean, it's like I said, it's been a challenge for sure. What does fill my cup is there's a few things. Like quality time with friends. You know what I mean? Quality time with friends is a big part of it. Um, Solitude. Like so a lot of people see me as like an extrovert. I'm the furthest thing. Like I need to be an extrovert in the position that I'm in, but I'm truly like, get me my mushroom coffee in the woods, solo. That's like ideal scenario.
introverted extrovert, you have to push that. Yeah.
So quality time with friends where I truly get to check in on them and like learn about what's going on in their life, and they get to check in and give me reminders. You know what I mean? And just have that like non-work time with friends that I love. Fills me up. Time in nature fills me up. Coaching kids fills me up a lot, actually. So coaching basketball is something that I love doing, and yeah, that's been this past year. That's been a huge part of me realizing the tension of balance and kind of holding the two things of, well, not sure I'm supposed to be balanced, but then also having this opportunity to find that balance. You know what I mean? And so that interesting tension, basketball and being around the sport of basketball and coaching young people, I think has been filling my cup a lot as well.
Well,
Amazing.
thank you for that. I'm gonna have to reflect on your words. I have asked that question to a lot of people, and I've never heard anyone answer like, I don't know if in the pursuit of doing something great, you can have balance in your life. So
It certainly makes me feel better about feeling like I've had almost none. It's like I continue to try to force myself to be like a Pilates, yoga, wake up at 7 and journal girly. And it's like when we're here doing podcasts and connecting, and as an extrovert thriving in that environment till 2 a.m, I can't journal at 7, and then I do feel that like shame. And so you've at least made me feel better. Now I don't need my therapy appointment I have scheduled next week. I got my therapy here at Tribe.
No, but I do feel like I am in no way, shape, or form an extrovert by any definition of the word. So I get what you're saying. Before we wrap up, do you feel there's anything we missed? Do you feel compelled, or is there anything important you would like to portray so that we don't feel like we have left anything out of what's important to you?
I don't think so. I think you guys have done an incredible job. I love what you're doing. I love that you wanted me to come on this podcast for years, and I love that we finally found the time to do it in person. And keep doing what you're doing. I hope that we can find ways to collaborate truly, in terms of the podcast and what you're doing and what you want to do in this space. Um, and Tribe, for anyone listening who is looking to get support for their business or to join a network of other racialized folks, join Tribe Network. Look us up. We have a beautiful community of people. We have resources that you can tap into to learn about how to start your business or how to access supports for your business. And so look us up and try to get involved. And you can also find me online. You know, follow me, reach out. Happy to connect with anyone who's listening to this and get some value out of it.
Yeah,
Amazing.
of course. Yeah. So to anyone who is listening to this audibly or video, of course, we will be posting all of the links, all the ways you can connect with Tribe. And yeah, if you haven't already, like, check them out. Like, they're a vast resource of information. But yeah, be sure to make sure you like and follow and subscribe and comment. Most importantly, not most importantly, I think sharing this content is very important to kind of get the word out there.
Yeah.
And
I feel like I was just going to say, I feel like we've shared a couple of things that Tribe has shared. And so we try to, you know, co-share. So like follow them, but we'll make sure that we share resources as well, because we want our network to be your network and to just, you know, I think everyone who listens to this podcast or who's been on it should be part of your network and be benefiting from you as well, because we are sort of very like a homeostasis.
Yes, it is. It is. And I think maybe there's an opportunity for us to be intentional. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
To think about how we can be intentional about connecting the dots between the two platforms.
Well, you heard it here. I guess we'll see what comes next from this interview, which was wonderful.
I'm not going to say the seed was planted here for this, but I think we watered it today.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much for having us in your space, and
we'll see you next week.
Yeah, peace.